fathers who are no longer with us. Father's Day just gone kind of triggered some emotions, and I wanted to talk about emotions that, people may be going through this time of year who have lost their father. So I got my good friend Rachel here to discuss and go through some questions and kind of back and forth between us and kind of how it's affected us and our family and kind of our outlook on life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it's a big deal. No matter how much we want
Yeah.
to tell ourselves, oh yeah, let's just get on and let's celebrate, the time they had with us and all of that. It's still a massive blow, whether you got on with your father or not, or losing a parent or sibling or any member of your family. It's a big deal. So yeah, I thought it might be a good discussion point to talk about dealing with grief and kind of how you move on and try and deal with that grief. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like you say around Father's Day, because everyone else is kind of celebrating their dads or the fact that maybe they are a dad.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and if, like you and I, we don't have that parent and we don't have any children yet of our own,
Mm.
then it can be kind of it's not isolating, but it certainly reminds you of what you haven't got
Yeah, definitely.
anymore.
And that
Yeah.
sadness, and I worked it, so it wasn't as bad. I didn't feel
Right.
previously
Yeah.
when I haven't. I felt really sad and kind of wallowed in that whole sadness for the day and
Yeah.
spoke to family about it, and so it was quite interesting this year where I was busy doing a 15-hour shift, and it,
Whoa.
every now every now and then I would get a text about Happy Father's Day. Sorry, not a text, notifications on IG
Yeah.
about Father's Day, and going out to fathers. Then you have that sadness of if I stopped during working with the residents I work with, then the sadness kind of built up. So to be honest, I
Yeah.
didn't really reflect as much as I normally do on it this year.
Yeah.
Previous years, I've definitely been sad and been very emotional over it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm
I
someone who
mean,
didn't have a great relationship with my dad, so that's interesting. So if you did, I'm sure the emotions again. What about you and your dad? How close was that?
yeah, I think I'd say we were pretty close. You probably put me down as a daddy's girl for sure.
I
So,
remember seeing some pictures, yeah, and I thought that.
yeah,
I'm gonna presume.
yeah. So, my dad had me quite late. So, my dad was born in 1938,
Mm,
and he married my mum when he was 25. He
yeah.
worked in the RAF, and they lived in France for a little while. He did 2 tours
Wow.
in Aden, and during that time he had a young family. So he had my brother and my sister, my older brother and sister, who
Mm,
are 14 and 12 years older than me. um, so they moved, my dad left the RAF and they moved to a town just outside of London. And they had me, and then I was a surprise. But then my mum went on to have my little brother as well, so there's 4 of us in total. um, and I remember when I was younger, because my dad really liked model things, so like
yeah.
model trains, and my little brother, he loved that as well. So they used to go to like model railway things together, and my dad would always get told or referred to as granddad with my little brother, even though he was his actual dad. So yeah, there's a big age gap there, and sadly I think because of that, when I was younger, and when you're young, you just think your parents are going to live forever, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
He was fine. He was an older dad, but he was fine and healthy until I was about 18.
Mm,
Around the time that I left home, actually. So like I got a job and I left home to go to my job, and yeah, and then he died about 10 years after that. So it's been 12 years since my dad died. So yeah, and growing up, we definitely disagreed on things, but I think we had a lot in common as well. And the nature of the person that I am is quite, I look for the connections rather than the differences. So so yeah, he was an engineer, and I'm a creative, so I think we both used our creative minds to get around problems or fix things.
Yeah.
And yeah, and he liked to surf. I mean, I'm terrible at it, but we both liked being in the sea. We both like going swimming. So yeah, like holidays was the best time with my dad, definitely. Summer holidays are great.
What was he like as a dad? What was he like? What was his style?
I think he was like, because of the nature of his age, I think he was quite old-fashioned. In some respects. So there was certainly discipline like within the household. Not that I ever really got into a lot of trouble with that, but yeah, I think it's really cliche to say, but the kitchen was my mum's place and the garage with all of the tools was my dad's place. That's just the way it was when I grew up. Yeah. But I was curious, so I would spend time in both of those areas. So I mean, that's kind of nice that they didn't say, no, you've got to stay in the kitchen, because, you know, we live in a modern world now, and I think they recognise that. But of course, they knew where their comfort zones were.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
How about you?
How about me? What was my dad like? My dad sounds very similar to your dad in that regards. He was very old school, very an authoritarian, traditions, West Indian background, and you know, again, the woman should be in the kitchen and, you know, kind of around and raising the kids, and the dad's there to be the breadwinner and, you know, tools in the shed and what have you, and the man who does all the person who does all the DIY or those type of jobs around the house. But yeah, the only time he'd venture the kitchen was when he was eating. So watching something. So yeah, very similar in that regard. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my dad was very serious though, a very serious man, and very rarely did you see a smile or anything. And the older I got, the older I got, I started to realize how he showed his love. You know, people show it in different ways.
Yeah.
And, you know, when he would, you know, we would be disciplined or whatever, or he'd be talking to us, explaining to us about life. That was his way of showing that he loved us and he cared. So I looked at it very different. Obviously, as a child, you'd prefer someone who smiled more and was more interactive with your upbringing. So, you know, but the older you get, you kind of understand that people are different, and not everyone can play love or show it in the way you may like.
It's tricky, and sometimes like you have to show them the way, and I'm sure that you did, and most children do. They show their parents an unconditional love that maybe they didn't have as a child as well. So they have learned behaviours that is just on autopilot when they are with their own children, and sometimes it takes a generation or two to like get that out of the system, get that out of the behaviours. I know my dad sadly lost his mum when he was 5, so he had his own dad bring him and his sister up, and you know, back in the 40s, God knows what that would have been like. You know, they were still in a war, things were scarce, it was hard enough, let alone losing your mum as well. So yeah, I think certain situations and things that happen to just human beings throughout childhood makes a massive difference to us in the way that we behave as adults as well.
Definitely, I totally agree. And him passing, what impact did that have on your family?
So my situation is not at all unique. However, it was a kinder way to put it. I don't really know how to put it into words, but he was ill for about 10 years. And then he passed away due to complications with influenza. So on his death certificate, it says that he had influenza, but of course he suffered with many things before that. So In the final year of his life, he was just a shell of a man, really.
Yeah.
The first 5 years, it was quite a rapid deterioration, and they gave him all types of drugs and things to help, but nothing seemed to work.
Yeah.
And he was in a wheelchair after about 3 years, and was just totally immobile after about 5 or 6. And my mum cared for him as much as she could, but she's not a spring chicken herself, so she and especially having to bring up 4 kids as well between the 2 of them, I think it certainly took its toll. But she looked after him for as long as she could, and the last couple of years of his life he was in a care home. And then he got the cold, and then he died in April 2008. So I was 27 at the time, and my younger brother was 22.
Did that, like the relationships in your family, what impact did it have on that? Did it bring you guys closer together?
Yeah, absolutely. And the weird thing is, so like my mum and dad have had 4 kids, and we're all very different, very, very different. We all have followed different careers. We have different ideas about life, and we don't always get along. And my older brother and sister, hadn't spoken to each other for probably about 6 or 7 years before my dad died. And there was always this thing of, like, if there was a celebration at Christmas, it's like, well, is the brother coming? Because if the brother's coming, then the sister's not going to come. And if the sister's coming, then the brother's not going to come. So there was never really a time when we were all together in the same room. And you've got to remember, there's nearly 20 years between my oldest brother and my youngest brother. So it's quite a diverse range of children because of what we've grown up with and our influences within 20 years. I know it doesn't sound that much, but it is almost like a different generation.
It is, yeah.
Like my brother could well have had my younger brother himself because of his age, and same for my sister as well. But yeah, it definitely brought us together, absolutely, 100%. I think we all felt we had to be there and provide whatever support we could for my mum. And yeah, we all dealt with it in different ways. I think my older brother, he's quite stoic. Me and my younger brother, we're certainly probably we were the most emotional about it all. I think we did a lot of crying between us. My sister, she was really good at talking to other people. And his funeral and remembrance service was just lovely because there was people from all walks of his life that I'd never met before. And being so young, I hadn't really appreciated that my dad had friends and my dad had colleagues. So it was really lovely to meet those people on that day and just hear the stories of what he got up to and the memories that he shared with the people when he was alive.
No, definitely. And that's a good thing. And sometimes, and the same happened with me, even relationships with other siblings that we didn't talk as much or what have you. You find going through that you pull together as a unit, as a family, and realize that you need it together, you're stronger. And that's the way to move forwards and getting through it together. And that's the only way through real support can you get through like grief. And as I said, even if, like me, I didn't have the best relationship with my dad. Still losing your father is a massive deal, and I underestimated how big a deal how much it would impact me. I didn't think I think that whole thing. Yeah, life goes on and let's move on and that type of thing. But then you realize that what, it's still a process. It's still something.
Yeah. You've only got one dad, whether he's a good dad or a bad dad, or you're a good child or a bad child. You've only got one. Yeah. And it's not until they go that you realize you hadn't asked them all those questions or got all that information that you might have wanted to have at some point in your life. And yeah, there's always going to be that void, and it never goes away. But you do learn to live with it.
Yeah. I think that's the key word, learn to live with it. And,
yeah.
To deal with it and process it. because the aftershock, you know, the whole missing the person, the void, as you talk about, is you know, it's learning to deal with those emotions and move forwards. And yeah, it's not easy, and it's a process. It's something you don't wish on anyone, to be honest. It's such a
No,
hard
of course
thing.
not. Yeah, it really is. It really is. But and I'm not trying to downplay it at all in saying this, but it does make you realize your own immortality as well,
Oh,
and it
definitely.
kind of helps you to think, right, okay, no more messing around, let's get on with this, and you know, get the best out of life that you can. I think for me, in terms of the grief, the first year was the hardest
Oh wow, yeah.
because it was the first time without that person in your life. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
First couple of
How
years.
did your
Was that?
how did your dad die?
It was a heart attack. It was sudden, but he had an infection
Mm.
as well.
Oh,
Um,
bless you.
and the last, he was very frail as well in his last, I'd say, 6 months. That I could do.
Sure.
That he just wasn't well, and type 2 diabetes, and you know, so he wasn't really well, and you can tell that. So
Mm.
things got worse when he could tell probably it was coming to the end, because I remember him flying out to Grenada, where he's from, and making sure he built a house for the family and stuff like that. So he did a couple of things, and the way he did, because he wasn't well when he did it, I was just like, you know, there's a reason why he's pushed it to go and do that. So, and then it just got
Yeah.
progressively worse after the flight, and you know, he ended up dying
Mm.
a heart attack. That was 6 years ago on New Year's Eve. Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Wow. Oh, that's
Yeah, so
hard. Yeah.
that was tough. That was tough to deal with. So
Yeah.
yeah, because we knew it wasn't well, but then the way it happened, it was just that night. You know, it happened, and you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's difficult to deal with. You still, when you think back of it, you remember how, you know, it kind of
Yeah.
affected. I think the big thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to talk about was moving on, because you know, life goes on. You know, it has to,
Yeah.
doesn't it? No matter what we
It,
go
it,
through. And it's trying to, you know, it's just, you know, using, you know, as you said, that whole immortality thing, you kind of realize that life is so precious, and you want to make the most out of life. What impact did it have on you in regards to life and your outlook?
I think, as I touched on before, I think it sort of made me realise that no one's going to live forever.
Mm,
Um, I think seeing him suffer as well that was so heartbreaking, because
mm,
we all wanted him to have a better quality of life, and you know, we all would have given our right arms to help that happen, but there's nothing you can do. All you can do is make that person as comfortable as possible,
yeah,
and try to spend as much quality time with them as you can. Um, but yeah, it's heartbreaking to see that, because you kind of feel it coming.
yeah,
And for me, I was, you know, like I said at the beginning, it's you know, it was quite a lucky thing, I suppose, because we knew it, we saw it
there you
coming.
go.
And like, you know, other people, they die in car accidents, or you know,
Mm,
something awful happens very quickly, and it's over, and you don't really have any time to process it, and you're at the funeral and people are sending you cards and flowers, and you're still like, hang on a minute, what's just happened? Whereas for me, and perhaps a little bit for you as well, Mike, we had the warning signs. I
yeah,
mean, I know I certainly did for a long time, so in a way that I think that must have made it easier for me, but it's never an
that's the thing.
easy's not the right word, it's never an easy thing. um so yeah, it's certainly made me, um I think in a way it's made me not rely on anyone.
Mm,
Because yes, I'm not immortal, but then neither is anyone else.
yeah. What about you? I was thinking more your approach to, because you're an actress and going for roles and stuff. Your mindset, how's that changed? Did it have an effect on your mindset and approach to going for roles, and how you go about, you know, applying your trade? I don't know.
No, I don't think it's really affected me in that way. I think it's more on a base level, down to my personality. It's not changed. um I mean, it's difficult to say because obviously it's been 12 years for me, so
Yeah.
I've had quite a lot of time to deal with the grief. And it's like I said before, it's never easy. It's just something that you learn to live with. Um, I think for me, the biggest change was receiving kindness from the strangest of places,
Okay.
because someone else has been through that grief as well, and they know what it's like,
Mm.
and they'll reach out to you just to say something, or just to remind you of something brilliant about your dad that maybe you didn't even know.
Yeah, that's
um
yeah.
that is like, wow, that, there's something so powerful about that. I mean, so for example, I a few years after my dad's death, I wanted to do something in his memory, so I decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
And I
Mm.
had so many donations of people that I didn't know but who knew my dad, that, I raised nearly £3,000, and half of that was from people I'd never met. So, and every donation they had like a little note about, I remember your dad, blah blah blah, and it was
Yeah.
just so lovely. um that, he like, I did have a chat to a friend of mine who's lost his mum a couple of years ago, and he's very, very upset still about it, and understandably, because they were very, very close. But he keeps saying about the things that he doesn't have anymore because he doesn't have his mum. And I think it's very easy for people to say, oh well, I can't do that because I don't have this, that and the other.
Mm.
And that's a certain attitude that you can choose to have. You can choose to say, well, I can't celebrate Father's Day because I don't have a dad and I'm not a dad. Or you can go, oh, isn't it nice that people get this day to
Oh,
celebrate the
definitely.
people who are special in their lives? And it's down to you which one you choose. And it's very easy to choose a negative
Mm.
track, because that is what a lot of our subconscious is used to, it's programmed to do. And it does take effort to see the positive side,
Oh,
but it's always worth it.
definitely. I was just thinking about that when you said, you can, not choose not to celebrate Father's Day or what have you. I made sure for this Father's Day, I sent a message out to all the fathers that I know of. So I sent
Ah,
fathers and everything like that. I made sure I made a whole real effort to send out a nice message and wishing them happy Father's
oh,
Day.
that's so sweet of you.
That was my little
See,
thing.
I don't do that. I just look at like the feed and go, oh, that's nice.
No, I made
But
a decision this year just do
I
something.
think
Yeah, go on.
no, I was just going to say, I think that for me, if it's your first couple of years since you've lost, if it's your father, if you've lost your father, you might just want to not look at your phone so much on that day,
Definitely.
because your phone is a great access for all the information of, your friends and what everything is, whatever's happening. Take yourself for a nice walk, go and do something that your dad used to do. Like, my dad loves steam trains and he loved miniature models. So, I maybe go for a walk in nature, remember some of the things, if you want to, if you feel ready to. And that's another thing. Some people, like maybe you've touched on, they just want to get on with the job. They just want to kind of forget about it. But it's never going to go away if you don't stop and think about it.
It doesn't work would be my advice to say is
Yeah.
process, give it time, cry as much as you need to cry, lay it out. Another thing, don't suppress your feelings. I was doing it for a long time because it will come out in another way and affect you in another way. Definitely let go and just just feel it, and that's the way of processing it. You need to feel it, and let your body react to it the way it wants to. Yeah, and don't
100%.
stop doing that, because
100%.
too many times we want to control our emotions and, oh no, you know what, you know, crying seen, especially coming from a male perspective, that is seen as a weakness and a background. I grew up in a West Indian background. You know, those strong emotions and crying and stuff like seen as weakness. So that was a big thing in my family. Oh, it shouldn't
That
be.
needs to change. That needs to change, doesn't it, Mike?
It
We know
does.
that needs to change now because it's hurting people more than it's helping people.
Oh,
I
definitely.
think I think seeing anybody cry,
Hmm.
it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that something isn't right. And you know, when you cry, other people instinctively reach out and help you and comfort
Oh,
you, and
definitely.
that's what you need. It's like it's never going to change the situation, but feeling that support helps you feel like you can go on with your day.
Oh, definitely. I think that's the
So
best. Embrace it. Embrace it.
absolutely.
Did you receive any grief counselling?
No, I didn't actually, but I mean, I was living abroad
Yeah.
not too long before he died, so when I came back, I wasn't really aware of what there was,
Yeah.
um, and I think I was in the middle of a job, so I think I took a week off, came home, went to the funeral, had the service, and then kind of just went
Wow.
back to London. I was living in London at the time, so yeah, so just went back into work. And but that's, you know, I didn't receive any counselling at the time, but I have had counselling since, and I can tell you now we've talked about that, and I think we should have had it nearer the time, but I
Oh,
think
big time.
as well because of the generational thing, it wasn't really talked about or suggested.
Yeah.
um so yeah, it's a wonderful thing to have counselling and just
Yeah.
to have somebody to talk over those things with you. It's yeah, it's amazing. I did cry for like 4 sessions. Just 4 hours of crying. But you know, look at me now. So
Yeah, I had it. I had it really soon after. What was that? Going into, was it the first year or second year of
mhm,
dad passed?
mhm,
It wasn't very good. My first back.
yeah.
It was the person I was going doing it with was just kind of ticking the boxes. So I didn't do anything to
Oh
the first set. Then I've had some recent sessions that are better. But then I find, you
yeah,
know, if you want the best, you got to pay for it, like with everything.
yeah, yeah. And don't settle for the first person that,
Yeah.
you know,
Sometimes you have
if
to,
you go
yeah.
and have a session with someone and it doesn't feel right, then change that person, because you're never going to open up to them if you don't feel comfortable with them.
And I'd definitely
And
recommend. I'd recommend it.
yeah,
You know, I almost think, yeah, it's not for everyone, and you know, I'm not saying everyone should do it, but I almost think it's a standard thing that you should do if you go through something
yeah,
like to process it and really deal with your emotions. And as I said, the background I'm coming from,
mhm.
I'm the only one out of the 5 children that have actually had it. So
Oh really?
yeah, so it just shows my 2 older sisters, older brother and younger brother have not had any type of
Mhm.
counseling, and I can see how they've struggled. They won't admit that, of course, because as I said,
Yeah,
it's seen as a sign of weakness. But you know, I think it would have benefited them definitely, great deal. Rather than
yeah, yeah.
those,
And that's the tricky thing, is you can't persuade anyone to do
no,
it. You like, if they've got this thing in their head that it's not going to work for them, then it never will. But if you think, oh, I'll give it a go and see, you never know. You never know what's going to happen, and turn out it might turn out that you talk about something totally different to
exactly.
the grief that you're feeling. But in the end, it helps you 100%. I'm totally with you on that. I have got a friend, and she's struggled with things, and she's been to counselling, and she's just not in the right mindset to
Yeah,
believe that it's going to work. She was told to go to it, so she went to it because she was told to go to it. She wasn't going to it with an open mind. She went to it with closed ideas, and of course, you know, whatever you believe, you'll receive. So it didn't work for
I haven't
her.
heard that in a
So
while, Rach, but I
yeah,
like it. I like it. I haven't heard that in so long. I don't know why, not been around people that use that anymore. But yeah, certain circles have changed, obviously. But I used to hear that a lot. What you believe.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to try and surround yourself with the people that you connect to and you want to be like, just in life in general. So, you know, I listen to a lot of things online, and I have podcasts that I listen to,
Yeah.
and a lot of them just help me kind of feel like it's okay to feel however it is that you're feeling. It's okay if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling like totally lost without that person, it's okay, and you're not alone. And that's the most important thing, is that you're not alone. I think a lot of people feel like it's never going to end, and like I said before, it never goes away, but you do learn to live with it.
I think the "you are not alone" is an interesting thing to say, because a lot of people feel like they want to be alone, because
Oh yeah,
when we talk about this whole wallowing thing and kind of, "Oh, leave me alone, I need to deal with it," and they don't want to be bothered, and believe it or not, you're doing yourself more harm than good, because this is where negative thoughts and depression may set in, anxiety, so even if it's something of doing an activity, exercise, or going for that walk, meeting up with a friend, you may not feel like it, but when you go and do it, I promise you, most of the time you end up enjoying what you did and thinking, "Oh, you know what, I was right to make the effort in the end," because a part of
yeah,
us who is feeding that whole, the negativity, the being depressed, the anxiety is
yeah,
feeding and giving us negative thoughts. So you almost have got a fight with that to get yourself to start feeling positive again, because these negative emotions can overtake. Is what
yeah, yeah. I think I remember when I got the news. I was living in London, so I got the news at the flat that I was renting, and my mum called me to tell me, and my first instinct on the phone was like, right, I'm coming to yours, I'm going to come and stay with you, which I did. But as soon as I put the phone down, I thought, that's it now. I don't have a dad anymore. And I kind of didn't want to move, because by doing anything made it real.
No, I
And
hear you.
I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to move. I didn't really want to even breathe. I was just, I think, in shock, I suppose.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't want things to change. But then I remembered that my mum was on her own. So I got up and I did the best thing to support my mum at that time, which was to
Well,
go
it is. Yeah.
and stay with her.
Yeah.
But I just remember that feeling, and it's a really difficult line to tread, to feel the grief, let it wash over you, but not to dwell in it. And when you get those invitations, don't refuse them all. You might want to refuse some because of the way that you feel. But if the people that are inviting you to things know your situation and they care and love you, then they will accept you going out or going to theirs or whatever it is you've got planned. And if you fall apart, they'll hold you together. And it's really important to feel the way that you feel, but like you say, to go and do those other things as well, even if it is just sit outside in the fresh air.
Yeah.
Go for a walk. Walking is fantastic. If you're able to go for a walk or be outdoors, do it because it's just great. I'm a big advocate for being outdoors.
Oh, definitely.
Sometimes I can feel it in myself. I mean, I'm 40 now, and I'm only really now starting to recognize when I need to go away and get some fresh air, because it's so easy for us to get involved in our own things, in our own worlds, the things that, the work that we're doing, and we put our mental health on the side. And it's so important to look after your mental health.
Definitely.
especially at a time of grief.
For me, walking was always, I remember being in retail and being a retail manager. If things got really stressful, the walk was my biggest thing because it gave me that clarity of thought. It cleared my head. When it was all
Yeah.
a bit fuzzy and there's all stuff going on and I couldn't quite, make sense of my day or the stress that I was feeling at that time, going for a walk, it just set everything, it just put everything into perspective. It made
Yeah.
sense, of the situation. And it didn't even have to be a very long walk. I'm talking maybe half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever you need just to get out of that situation and put your head in a clearer space that you can actually make sense of what's going on. And sometimes when you're amongst it all, you can't see clearly, and you're just bombarded by, whether it's negative thoughts or what have you, or stress from the people above you in a company or whatever. So it's nice to take a step away. I remember that was always my thing. Go for a walk. If it's still getting too much, go for a walk and you're always about stuff. Definitely.
Yeah.
I had another question about kind of where you're at in your career, and if your dad was around today, what he would kind of make of your achievements and any advice you think he would give.
Do you know what? I've never really thought of that. I've never really thought how he might think about what I do for a living now. I mean, he had a little glimpse of it before he got sick, really, because my first job was working at Butlins. And the family did come and visit me there whilst I was working there. So he got a glimpse of, what I was getting myself into. And I think he was proud. He never said anything negative. I had, two very supportive parents in respect of what I was doing. And I think possibly that's because I was good, but possibly also because they're my parents, so they're kind of biased.
Yeah.
So I think he would probably there are times, I guess, looking back throughout my career, there are times when I wish I had someone else to ask and not just my mum for certain things. I wish there was somebody else who knew me as well as he did. I could ask my godparents, who are lovely people, but I'm not particularly close to them. They're a similar age to my mum and dad, but they wouldn't necessarily understand what I was talking about if I came to them with a specific question. So yeah, I think I miss having him around to help guide me to make those decisions. But equally, not having him here and only having that one parent now has made me think, right, what are all the outcomes of my problem? And what's the best thing for me to do? So yeah, it kind of turns you into a superhuman because you can think about what they might have said or think. It's so easy when they're not around to put them on a pedestal and make them this amazing person. But essentially, like I said before, there's lots of things about my dad that I have, good and bad. And my view, which I think, to a lot of people is a bit airy-fairy, but I think my dad's still with me. Every time I see a steam train, I think of my dad. Every time I see a surfboard, I think of my dad. Every time, there's a certain smell of, what's it used to, Old Spice. Certain smells remind me of my dad. Engineering, like metal works and woodworks, that the smell of people working on that reminds me of him. There's a cover on my sofa that I bought for him, which I've still got, so I inherited that. So that reminds me of him. He's alive because he's in me.
I hear that.
So that's just the way I like to look at it.
Lives on with his family.
Yeah,
I hear that.
I think he would be. I think he would be proud. He might be a bit annoyed that I'm not as far along as I should be, but that's because he's the way he was. And essentially, I think both my mum and dad, God bless them, just want all their kids to be happy, and I certainly am that.
Good. What would my dad say? He'd probably be happy the fact that, you know, I've made a career for myself. I'm hardworking. You know, I got married and settled down.
Yeah.
I think he'd have been happy about that. But he's a man of very few words, so that's very interesting to think about that. What he'd actually say. I think he'd just be all right. He'd probably just nod his head.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah.
You did okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go. Yeah. You did okay.
Fundamentally, I think it's all around his kids just being happy and them living lives and them not struggling or suffering in any way. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's the importance of it all, isn't it? When we go back to wallowing in, you know, the grief and not wanting to do stuff and that, we need to think about what they would want for us. They wouldn't want us to stop living our lives if they passed away. They would want us to keep on going and aim for, you know, trying to live our best lives. And so that's how we need to look at it. Maybe when we get into our slump, is to, would they have been happy just wallowing and doing and just being depressed and not living our lives? What would they want? They would want us to be getting on with our lives and trying to succeed and making the most of it. So that's how I look at it sometimes.
That's a really good way to think about it. Really good way to think about it. I know that there's been some challenges that I put upon myself, so physical challenges that I've done, and I've got to the point where I'm like, can't do it anymore. I've got to stop now. And then after just a moment of thinking all the pain and upset that my dad went through in his last few years of life, I'm like, no, let's do it again. Can do it all over again. You know, it gives me a little bit more push to get to where I need to get to hit that goal, to go that extra mile up the mountain. So yeah, even though they're not around anymore, the memories are with you. So yeah.
Have you got any more advice to give to anyone who's lost a sibling, parent, or what have you? We have covered stuff, I must admit. We have gone through some bits of advice within the conversation, but if you
no, that's all right. I can summarize and recap if you like.
Is there anything else, or maybe summarize?
I think counselling is number one on my list, but you don't have to go to it straight away. I'm pretty sure that there are free counselling services that are provided by the councils across England to do with grief, especially when it's losing a close family member. I would say, if you're not ready straight away, is to take the information and just keep it somewhere safe. And when you feel ready to go back to it. And if you're ready, I promise you won't regret it. As I said before, don't always settle for the first person. If you go to a meeting and you don't feel comfortable, you're either not ready to talk about it, or it's not the right person. It's not the right counsellor for you to talk to. Take your time in that. Be gentle on yourself. You're going to feel all kinds of emotion. You're going to feel anger. You're going to be upset. You're going to feel like, what do I do now? What is my life's purpose for some people? I know for my mum, when my dad left, when my dad passed away, she questioned what her life was about, because for so many years it had been like revolved around his care. So I mean, I suppose it's different for children, but you may well have been part of that care team, and you know, you do change your life a lot to support your loved ones, of course you do. And when they're no longer with you, it's quite a tricky time. So just be gentle and be kind to yourself as much as you can. know that you're not alone. Your grief will never be the same as everyone else's grief, and you will go through it in different speeds. So you might have a sibling who is over it 6 months down the line, and you might have another sibling who's still crying every day. You just have to recognize that people deal with it in different ways, and whatever way that you are dealing with it is good for you. So sit with your feeling, get out in nature, go for walks, and remember that they brought you into the world, and they might have some really bad traits, but they've also got lots of good traits, and you can choose to carry on those good traits in your life, and they'll always be with you.
Yeah, that was great advice, Rach. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say in regards to what you touched on. I think you touched on most things. All I'd say is about think about your support network and holding them close when you're going through times of need, and the real friends, the real people you can rely on, not just the acquaintances you talk to every now and then. You know, the people that you know you really love and love you the same. Hold them close to you in times of need, and I think that's the way to move forward. And you know, lean on people when you need them, and don't think you need to deal with this alone. You know,
Yeah.
support to move forwards. And, you know, you, as I said, the wallowing and being on your own doesn't help. I've done it, so I'm talking from experience. I'm not just making it up. I've been there, and where I didn't want to, you know, process the whole thing. I just wanted to move on with my life, and I did a lot of the wallowing and stuff like that. I just ended up feeling worse, and I just ended up feeling more down. So what picked me up was reaching out and talking to close friends and family, and then getting the counseling and stuff like that, and that helped me move forwards. You know, because we end up setting these barriers up, maybe mental barriers about, you know, what we want to achieve in life or what have you, and a lot of things that we don't process, like our emotions, grief and stuff like that, can end up putting these barriers up. And you know, we may think, oh, why can't I move past this or move on? And a lot of that's not dealing with stuff, major things in our life that have happened. We need time to deal with them. We need to process them so we can have a clear mind and then get on with our lives and move forward.
Yeah.
Anything else, Rach?
Yeah. No, I think that's all from me. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's been lovely to talk with you.
You know that, and thanks for talking about something so personal. That's not even me, never mind. So, thank you very much, Rachel. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Bye, take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.